You guys all knew this video was coming. I'm a die-hard Missouri football fan, and I'm very excited to bring you my 2021 wrap-up for the Missouri Tigers. The season did and didn't go according to plan, as there were definitely some highs and lows, some good moments, some bad moments, and some good things to take away and some bad things to take away. Obviously, Missouri ended up making a bowl game, which many thought was impossible back in October, but they did manage to do that. Unfortunately, they lost a humiliating game to Army, which is not going to look good in the eyes of SEC fans or the national media, so that was not fun. But overall, Missouri did make some progress on and off the field, and in today's video, we're going to wrap up this year, talk about what went right and wrong for the team, the key players, and my vision for the future of Missouri football. But right before we get into it, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we can do better than that as we are on the road to 100K, so quickly be sure to do that, smash that like button for the algorithm, and turn on post notifications so you never miss when I upload. Now, let's wrap up and talk about Mizzou football. So, Mizzou football going into 2021 actually had a decent amount of hype. I remember most people thought they'd go between 7-5 and 9-3, and of course you had your die-hard fans who thought they would win over 10 games, and then you had your Debbie Downers who thought they wouldn't even make a bowl game. Overall, though, the consensus was that they were going to be a mid-tier SEC team who was likely going to make a bowl game and maybe pull off an upset or two. At least, that's what I thought. We knew that in their first few games we would learn a lot about the team, and both the Boston College and Kentucky matchups would say a lot about how the year would go. But before we can talk about that, we need to go back and see how this roster was supposed to shape up. The Tigers actually lost a lot from the 2020 team. The squad ended up going 5-5, and they did get selected to play Iowa in a bowl game, but eventually that all fell through. Nick Bolton was an all-SEC caliber player and was taken in the second round by the Kansas City Chiefs, where he has been dominant as a rookie, but obviously the linebacker spot was going to be a place of need. You also lost a couple other guys from the defense, including Tyree Gillespie and Joshua Bledsoe, both of which were safeties who were taken in the 4th and 6th round of the 2021 NFL Draft. You also lost their best offensive lineman in Larry Borum, and then one of the best running backs in program history in Larry Roundtree. Luckily, there are going to be guys who could step up in each spot. At the quarterback position, you had Conor Basilak, who's actually the co-SEC Offensive Player of the Year, and many thought he would take the next step in 2021. The backups included Brady Cook and true freshman Tyler Macon. Macon was a 4-star recruit coming out of East St. Louis High School, and Cook was an under-recruited 3-star recruit from St. Louis as well, and they both battled it out to be the backup quarterback. No one really thought those guys would see the field. In terms of the running back spot, Roundtree was gone, but his natural successor was Tyler Beatty. Beatty had been the backup for the last few years, and it was going to be his time to shine, and he did that in 2021, and we're going to talk about that later. The backups included Elijah Young, BJ Harris, Taj Butts, and Dawson Downing. Out of those four, Elijah Young was supposed to be the breakout guy, but he had a very slow start to the season, and while he did show some flash in the bowl game, and Beatty had an historical season, the running back spot was a little bit underwhelming behind him. The wide receivers were supposed to be a strength. They returned Kiki Chisholm, Tosky Dove, Barrett Bannister, Boo Smith, Chance Looper, and J.J. Hester. They also brought in a couple guys in the recruiting scene that included Ohio State transfer Mookie Cooper and 4-star freshman Dominic Lovett. In my eyes, the problem with the receiving corps is that they didn't have a true number one option, and that definitely showed this year, as when we touch on the statistics, you'll figure out why. The offensive line was supposed to be average. No one thought they'd be one of the top groups, and no one thought they'd be terrible either. Michael Maddy was the center, and he was predicted to have an all-conference season, which he did. The defensive line was anchored by All-SEC member Trajan Jeffcoat, and then both Kobe Whiteside and Isaiah McGuire also were supposed to play roles. The linebacker spot would end up not being that great after Bolton left, and then the secondary was chewed up. Because of that, they brought in Allie Green and Caleb Evans from Tulsa, and both of those guys did make an impact, but only one of them really capitalized on the opportunity. So, they would go into week 1 playing against Central Michigan. This game did not go well. They won 34-24, but it was basically close throughout the whole game, and there was absolutely no reason for this Missouri team to struggle with this Central Michigan team who was playing with a backup quarterback. There were red flags, but it was week 1, so they got a pass. In week 2, they would go on the road to Kentucky, a game I was actually at, and this is when a lot of the flaws would show. While the offense was decent as they put up 28 points, the defense was absolutely horrible, and outside of a few lucky turnovers, this game could have been way out of hand, and the secondary and run defense was absolutely atrocious. Kentucky won 35-28. In week 3, they beat SEMO as expected, and in week 4, they had a huge test against Boston College. They got out to an early lead, and they controlled the game for the most part, but Boston College would score a late touchdown and take a late lead. Thankfully, they had one of the best kickers in the country, and he had a really long field goal to force the game to OT. Boston College would quickly score, and Conor Basilak would throw an interception. That right there was the turning point in the season. They lost their first two 50-50 games of the year, and that was the moment Conor Basilak's confidence went into the dumpster. So, how did they play in Week 5? It was terrible. They lost 62-24 to Tennessee, and the Volunteers honestly could have put up 100. The defense was in flames, the offense had no confidence, and now the fan base had stopped caring. They were 2-3, and they would have to figure things out if they wanted to make a bowl game. They had beat North Texas by only 13 points before they would get beat by Texas A&M. At 3-4, things were not looking good. They went on the road and played Vanderbilt. In this game, they definitely played down to competition. After a Hail Mary before halftime and a late score, Missouri would survive on the road 37-28. After that, they would go on the road to play number 1 Georgia, where they got blown out 43-6. This was a game in which all 3 quarterbacks saw the field, and many started to question Elijah Drinkwit's decision to stick with Basilak. It didn't matter though, they just had to win 2 of their last 3 games, and they could go to a bowl game. This started with a win over South Carolina, but after blowing 14 points late in the fourth quarter, the Tigers barely hung on to survive and got to their 5th win. Then they had my favorite game of the year, in which they played against Florida. They ended up winning this game 24-23 in overtime after Conor Basilak completed a pass to Daniel Parker, and not only did this get Dan Mullen fired, but it got Mizzou to bowl eligibility. They were 6-5 with a 3-4 mark in the SEC, and no longer did anyone really care about how they did against Arkansas. They got beat 34-17 by the number 25 Razorbacks and finished at 6-6 with a 3-5 mark in the conference. They got selected to play in what was probably the worst Power 5 bowl in the Armed Forces Bowl, where they got matched up against Army, which was a lose-lose scenario. You win that game and no one cares, and you lose that game and everyone gives you crap. That's exactly what happened. Basilak was benched for this, and Brady Cook started. Tyler Beatty opted out, and the offense actually moved pretty well with him there. Cook threw for over 200 yards, rushed for 50 yards, and had 3 combined touchdowns, but it would not be enough, as after a late score from Missouri, Army would march down, kick a game-winning field goal, and win 24-22. Missouri went 6-7 on the year, in year 2 under Elijah Drinkwitz. So, how did the players do, what went wrong, and what is the vision for the future? Well, the quarterback play was not great. Conor Basilak passed for 2,500 yards with 16 touchdowns and 11 picks, but his confidence was at an all-time low. He was not a threat to even run the ball, and at best, he was just a good game manager. Everyone questioned Elijah Drinkwitz's decision to keep playing Basilak week after week, and while I loved Conor, it was time for a change throughout the year. I don't think a backup would have changed the record, but at least would have made the offense a little bit better, and it would have been positive momentum going into 2022. Brady Cook, as I said, showed out in their game against Army, and it looks like he's going to be the quarterback 1 moving forward. Tyler Macon's arm was not there, but I think he's going to get developed in the offseason and hopefully push Cook for the job. Plus, they have a top 120 quarterback coming in by the name of Sam Horn, so there's likely going to be a 3-man quarterback battle, and that's not even including if they bring in a transfer quarterback. In terms of the running department, Tyler Beatty had an historic year. He had 1,604 yards, 14 touchdowns, and also managed to catch 54 passes for 330 yards and 4 more touchdowns. This was the most yards in a season for a Mizzou running back ever. He was an All-SEC member and a consensus All-American. He's also a finalist for the Doak Walker Award, will likely be a 2nd or 3rd round pick, and legitimately put the entire team on his back. The guy was absolutely insane. He had 5 200-plus yard games, which puts him in elite and rare company in the SEC. In terms of his backup, Elijah Young did play well in the bowl game. There's going to be a lot more desired from that room. Luckily, they bring in a 4-star recruit by the name of Tavoris Jones, and him, Elijah Young, Michael Cox, and BJ Harris are likely going to battle it out for that running back 1 position. In terms of the receiving spot, I wasn't very impressed. Tosky Dove led the team with 38 catches for 576 yards and 0 touchdowns. Tyler Beatty actually had the most touchdowns of any receiver with 4, and in terms of actual receivers, Kiki Chisholm had 41 catches for 511 yards and 3 touchdowns. I wanted to see more of guys like JJ Hester, Chance Looper, Mookie Cooper, and Dominic Lovett, but it seemed that Drinkwitz was content on playing the older veterans, and next year we're probably going to get a good dose of young players and dudes with a lot of potential. When you take a look at the defense, Blaze Aldridge led the team with 89 tackles, and he was a pretty decent replacement to Nick Bolton. Martez Manuel also had 77 tackles, and he was pretty good in terms of deflecting passes. Jalen Carlisle led the team with 4 interceptions, and he's a guy who I think will be a future NFL pick. Chad Bailey emerged towards the end of the year, and Isaiah McGuire became a pretty good defensive lineman, and I think the best defensive lineman since Jordan Elliott. He led the team with 6 sacks. Chris Abrams-Drain, Trajan Jeffcoat, and Caleb Evans and Mekhi Wingo all started playing really well towards the end of the year, and then Caleb Evans led the team with 6 pass deflections. In terms of NFL potential, Caleb Evans is likely going to be a day 2 or day 3 pick. Tyler Beatty is likely going to be a day 2 or day 3 pick, and Michael Maietti is probably going to be a day 2 or day 3 pick. I think only 3 guys will get selected in this year's draft, and maybe someone takes a flyer on another player, but those 3 guys I would pencil in that department. In terms of what went wrong, the quarterback play wasn't great, the depth on the offense and defensive line was not great, and overall, the defense really struggled to adjust to Steve Wilks' new system. While many believed he would be fired, and no one guessed he'd even have a job right now, Wilks' defense actually looked a lot better towards the end of the year, and I think he's going to be retained going into 2022. And with a lot of these young pieces and young players coming back next year, Mizzou's defense could be much improved and one of the more fun units to watch in the SEC. While I am a little bit disappointed with their 6-7 record, I'm just happy they made a bowl game. It was a great year for Tyler Beatty, and I look forward to next season. When we take a look at the future, Missouri signed a historic recruiting class. They signed the number 3 overall player in the country in Luther Burden, and also had 6 more 4-star recruits. It's honestly pretty insane. Drakewitz so far has the 12th ranked class nationally, which is 5th in the SEC, and it includes Luther Burden, 4-star quarterback Sam Horn, 4-star running back Tavoris Jones, and then a couple of guys such as Marquise Graciel, DJ Weselick, Isaac Thompson, and Jamarian Wayne. Those guys are all 4-star blue chip players, and both Marcus Scott and Xavier Simmons are ranked as 4-star players on other recruiting sites. This class has a lot of depth at positions of need, and I am unbelievably excited to watch what these players are going to do. Next year's wide receiver core is going to have so many players of equal talent and high ceilings, and we're really going to get a chance to see who becomes the best. The defense should be much improved, the defensive line will return McGuire and Jeffcoat, and if Missouri can find a good quarterback 1 and running back 1, they could be a threat to be a breakout team. Unfortunately, the schedule is very difficult, so we will know very early on if they're going to have that kind of year. What do you guys think though? If you're a Mizzou fan like me, let me know your thoughts on this season, what I got right and wrong in this video, and what your opinion on the future of the program looks like. If you're a fan of another school, let me know your thoughts on Mizzou football as well. Give me a team I can preview next, and any other topic I can do in my next video. Before you go, don't forget to smash that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.